Hello, I'm going to show how to do a bit of work in Motionbuilder to make Mocap switch over to be animating a custom-made character. And for this you'll need two things. One is a bit of Mocap saved as FBX. So this is a kind of file format which means you can bring in a skeleton, which is what we have here. And the other thing is a skeletonized character mesh. So a kind of humanoid figure that can take this skeleton and data recorded onto this skeleton and have it itself. So a skeletonized character figure would be something that maybe comes from Quick Rig in Maya, but you don't need the control rig bit, so you can just put the skeleton in. A skeleton from Blender, or Rigify I think it's called in Blender. And the option I've chosen is Mixamo. And Mixamo is a really great way to get your fairly simple character skeletonized for no money at all and very little time. So all of these things, Quick Rig, Rigify and Mixamo, are kind of simple character binding or skinning solutions. And Mixamo is kind of called auto rigging, but it doesn't really provide you with a rig, it just provides you with the skeleton, but it can still do a pretty good job. Anyway, in terms of control rig, that's going to come when we bring our character in and transfer the motion across. So that's going to be quite nice. Okay, so the process here starts with a look at the mocap. Now, this is just my version of it. You don't have to start with the mocap. You can start with your own character. But one thing I want to do is to show you how you might want to kind of clean up some of this data. Okay, so there's our skeleton and the action going across. Okay, so now if we look towards the end here, just as I scrub across there, you can see there's the hand starting to twitch. Let's just kind of zoom in a bit. I've got this set to Maya controls interaction, and you can see the buttons I'm pressing on keyboard and mouse up here, which tends to help quite a bit. I've noticed in a lot of videos there's tutorial videos, there's comments, what did you press to get to such and such a window or dialogue or make the magic happen. So let's just see a bit closer there. Oh yeah, so there's a little twitch. Okay, so as might happen with mocap, a bit of the suit might slip, kind of just break its idea of what's going on. There's some things going on with the fingers as well. The mocap solution was a 45 joint skeleton, and I think it's treating all of the fingers as one kind of mitt that's 3 jointed, but somehow some little independent action has turned up. So it's nice that you get a skeleton that you can kind of hand animate later. It's almost like it's a nice off the pit. Anyway, so some dodgy bits here. I'm going to fix up the arms and leave the hands to somebody with more patience. Okay, so the worst of that's quite near the end here. There we go. Bit of jerkiness. So anyway, let's see what we can do with that. And once I kind of had a look at that motion there, we can then get on to the characterization and then transfer the motion across. Okay, so in Motionbuilder, the bits that you want to see are generally here. So we've got our character skeleton, which is prefixed with Tom, and the hips as the root part of that. So we can select it here, or you can just click the bones themselves, and again it's easier to see what's going on when you haven't got a mesh around it. So I'm taking advantage of this bit of simple stuff to have a go. Okay, so I'm looking at this upper arm bone here. One of the things you can do, which is a kind of real bugbear for a lot of Motionbuilder users, is use this dialog here. And this, so if I go into rotate mode, and all the adjustments you can do actually are through rotation. You shouldn't ever do joint movement. And as you can see, this dialog here is really awkward to read. It's missing the bottom off, and no matter what you kind of drag in the interface, it doesn't seem to make any difference. There's something to do with DPI settings for people with 4K screens, which this isn't. I mean, maybe there's a generic Windows setting that will help with this, but yeah, seems a bit awkward anyway. So rather than struggle if this dialog area isn't open to you, and it's quite useful, you can kind of put numbers in direct like that, but as I say, it might not be open to you. I'm going to undo that quick. Because really I don't want to zero that at all. I just want to make sure that it's the motion is smooth. So I've got my selected object here, and just for a bit of clarity, if we go over down to this left menu and right click and do expand to selection, you can see the whole chain. So it's got quite a useful kind of quick access to the nested areas. I'll just drop another one down because we're going to need that forearm as well at some point. Okay, so let's see what it looks like in the curve of keys. So if I select, start with the X, and you can see it's just a kind of wiggly line that's over many frames. Our Mocap system defaults at 120 keys, frames, I guess it's called in the Mocap sense, 120 frames per second. And what we want to do is change that to 30 frames a second, probably better at 60, but I'm going to try and keep it simple. But let's just play that back and make sure I've not monkeyed around with the timing. So yeah, the timing's maintained, so you can change those settings. But that doesn't mean we've kind of got, it's almost like we've got 4 keys per frame now. So this curve is made up of the multiple keys that we've got from Mocap. And there are controls here for the interface, which is sort of okay, but you don't want to keep going to that button there to make the changes. So I'm going to use the key shortcuts, which is the Alt key, and it's just like navigating the viewport in Maya. Other software is available. So let's kind of zoom in and see what we got. So going nice and close, and you can really see once you get proper close how much kind of twitching or glitching there is in this captured motion. It's quite interesting. There's a kind of curve there, but each kind of every other frame or so, it's got this little jerk in it, which isn't kind of desirable. So the options are, because you've got so many keys, you can actually sacrifice some. So you can select the area and delete them, and then you can just get a straight line track. Now I'm thinking this curve is just a kind of progressive slip on one of the markers, which the Mocap I don't know, produce some sort of wacky data stream for. So let's grab these and let's see what happens to the motion if we just reduce the kind of variance in that section. So there might still be some twitching, but it should be a lot less severe. That's not too bad. The other thing you can do is just simply hit the delete key, and that leaves you with a straight line from the start of the selection to the end of the selection, which might work okay actually. Okay, it's still kind of twizzling a bit, but that's probably due to the other axes. Oh yes, there's some bad bits there. And of course you can do a drag select like that and delete those ones, and that should leave a kind of naturalistic-ish looking line, as you see. Yeah, it's quite a jerk there, so let's kind of fix that one up as well. So I just want to show how you can do some kind of quick edits and just even some things out a bit, smooth them. You don't want to do too much, because some of this is kind of characteristic for the movement of the person in the suit, and what you might end up doing is end up with something a bit robotic. So yeah, do it with a bit of sensitivity, I guess. Okay, but a bit of skill and judgment, and after the first time you're gonna get better at it. So I think there's some stuff going on in that forearm. I just checked the last the Z trail. There are some instant controls here, so you can see everything. Frame playback range. That one I could do with everything. There we are. So yeah, don't worry if you can't see it straight off. It is there. Now sometimes when you get a nice kind of vertical, steep, smooth curve like that, it just means you haven't gone in close enough to see the granularity. And when you've got 120 kind of keys per second, yeah, you can see where that one sort of become a little bit round up, round down. It's like it didn't quite know where to position the key or the coordinates. Okay, so let's just see what we can do with that. It's almost like that steeper you go, it's easier to see which ones need to go. So all those ones there. It's a little bit hard because at some point further back here, this line looks like it's going towards the top set, but they're the ones I'm deleting. So if you stretch it up like that, you can't use these very much, because they're, you can end up with some straight bits on a some flat bits on a quite steep curve, something like that. Anyway, so it might look like I'm dealing with a lot of keys, but it's kind of like at 30 frames a second, if I remove, I don't know, 8 keys, that's a bit of dodgy maths. It's only like 2 frames, I guess, over 30 frames a second. So yeah, it's highly unlikely to spot as a bit of savagery or kind of mechanic introduction. It's not so useful at this particular point because you're clicking on all sorts of other things, but if you click on a bone and it's not kind of right and you want one lower down the chain, use the down arrow key, and that takes you to the one next down. Up arrow of course goes upwards, but once you get to the shoulder it doesn't quite know which way you want to go next. Actually it does, it knows you want to keep going to the hip, and then you can't go up anymore. Anyway, back down. So we're now on the forearm. Let's have a look at the keys for that. You can actually see all of the keys together, but it's a little bit confusing. It can help you, I suppose, choose which one is the kind of worst offender, but they're all The red's okay actually, but the green's pretty ropey and the blue's pretty ropey. So let's try and fix up the green issues. Okay, have a quick scrub and see. Not too bad, still something going on there. So as always, your eye is the best judge. Don't get used to kind of looking at the waveforms and expecting to, preemptively fix it, because you'll probably end up getting rid of something that maybe is a better kept than trashed. So that's probably done that. But yeah, after a while you probably get used to working with all three axes together. Yeah, so there's a bit of tidy up. Okay, moving on now then. I'm just going to pull back. By the way, you can choose which view, and the one I use a lot is producer perspective, but sometimes you do want an orthographic view, especially when doing a fiddly characterization, which this one will prove to be. Okay, so mocap skeleton, because people are different shapes, and because the markers are supposedly betraying where joints are, but they're never really on joints unless you count the skull as one. They're usually kind of somewhere around the joint, and is kind of interpreted by the software and the skeleton design to a great extent. Okay, so if I scrub this back, I'm going to need to do the rest of this from the frame 0 position. This is another thing, our mocap system and Motionbuilder, well, not so much the mocap, but certainly Motionbuilder, really likes T-posing. And if you've done an A pose for your character, you're going to have to sort of correct that during this phase of operations. Okay, so I'm not going to characterize this yet. I'm going to bring in the other part of the equation, which is the character figure that we're going to map the motion onto. Okay, so we're going to go, I could do it through the merge dialog. Merge dialog is the same as if I was in File Explorer and I could see the file here and just dragging and dropping, I'd get the same menu. Anyway, so this is my figure, which might have a skeleton in it. I want to discard all animation, apply a namespace, use new namespace, and I'm going to call this one okay, so here's my figure. And I'm going to have a little break and get the figure with the skeleton in. See you in a moment. So yeah, I'm back, and I've found the figure necessary. So I've got this character that I put through Mixamo. Now the reason I'm using Mixamo is because I tend to find that the Mixamo skeleton characterizes really quickly and easily. So that means it's kind of, those of you who want to use Mixamo are going to kind of enjoy that bit and only have to go through the stress of fixing up the mocap skeleton, because that tends to be a bit wayward. So let's just have a quick look at what we've got in terms of character. So we have a character mesh, currently in green, and it's got some separate mesh elements, which is just the eyeballs really. I've got the eyes in one group. So you can kind of bang meshes together. They don't have to be a single piece. For a lot of things you do want that really, so that's the reason for that. And then bound to all those bits of mesh are the hips and the rest of the skeleton, of course. Okay, now it's awkward to do much with the figure when the mesh is in the way, so then you convert to X-ray and you can see the skeleton and access it fairly quickly. Okay, so let's start characterization with this Mixamo skeleton. I've zoomed in a bit fast there, sorry for the motion sickness. If you, by the way, map in your folder, especially the folder from your modeling software where you tend to dump your files or exports, that becomes then part of this, and you can drag and drop stuff into the scene with very much convenience. I've something mapped in here, but obviously I don't seem to have that much stuff in it. Oh, no, loads of stuff in it. Anyway, back to this. So in the characters is the default character that you need for the next bit of process. Now, there are a couple of different ways to do this process, and one of them is driving through this menu here. But I just kind of got used to this one, and it's very visual. So select this character called character. Once just the hips are selected, drop characterize biped, and this area tells you what you got, only it whips you over to controls and doesn't show you that what you do have is a fully ready character. That means the bones that for instance are for the left upper leg or left thigh bone, left up leg it's called here, have coordinated with the character's own left upper leg bone. So it's I think it just gives the name of the bone. There you are, left up leg. Could it be that it actually has the same? Yeah, I think it probably has the same bone name, so that made the process quite easy too. Okay, so that one's done. And the key thing is you've got a tick there. Obviously all bones are green when you see the tick there, and you've got a padlock. Okay, so let's see if it's kind of made all the right guesses. There's the fingers put in as well, so that's pretty good. Got to like that. Now some character systems also provide you with a kind of platform or a foot base, which is sometimes also called a reference, and that can go there if you have one, but no matter. I'll show you the assignment process with the next skeleton, which won't be as easy as this. Now when you characterize, your character gets called character, which isn't very helpful. So you go over to the navigator, find the characters in your scene, which is one called character, and then you specify a name for it. So you right click, rename. This process will become quite relevant very soon, don't worry. So I'm going to call it Norris Mix. There we go. Just say that it's from Mixamo. Okay, so things about name spacing and such is a bit of a hassle maybe, but not quite sure what it does. Well, what it does is it provides prefixes to names of stuff in here, which is actually very useful. So with the characterization, it's applied a human IK solver, which means it's capable of now having a control rig applied to its joints. which if you're going to do any animation is probably what you want. Okay, the control rig will not include the facial rig that some nicely equipped rigs do allow you to do for facial animation, but never mind. Okay, so that's done, that's good, and it's got a kind of specialized name, so that's all very good. Anything in the takes list? We should only have one thing in the takes list, which is the take that is on the other skeleton. Okay, so the time it took me to find this file, by the way, is probably the time I could have got it to put a skeleton in the one that didn't have one anyway in mixer mode. That process is that quick. So go to mixermode.com if you're not quite sure what I'm talking about. You'll need a skeleton mesh, a non-skeletonized mesh of a humanoid figure that is in FBX format. Okay, so I've got my character, which is now Norris Mixer, and it has no kind of source control at the minute. Okay, let's now revert to working with this. Before I do, by the way, I think I'm going to just move my character up so that it's just that little bit more sensible once it gets the mocap on. I should probably go to a orthographic view and get it spot on. That'll do. Okay, so right. Okay, so let's now characterize this one. So we go from here, drag and drop onto the hips, characterize, biped. Now this time the results won't be quite so good. Yeah, that's another reason why, the rename thing is well worth doing, because I could see instantly that I was looking at the one I'd done, not the one I'm doing now. And I'm going to rename this straight off the bat. So I'm going to call that Mocap. Mocap skull. Okay, so we can see from the attempt at characterization there that it's not been totally successful. Some good bone names, obviously. What the interface kind of hides from you is, and I seem to make it worse there rather than better, is the status, and that's what you want to see. So first thing is the hips don't seem to be facing the positive direction of the Z axis. That means hips facing forwards, and if I was to go back to producer view, I could see that this character is facing more backwards than forwards. So that's the first thing to do. So I'm going to try and fix that up. It's around the green, which is the Y axis. So currently that's showing at 92. Let's try manual rotation. Okay, now what will happen once I get the hips to face in the right way, these legs will come good because they are so you can actually tweak it. So rather than messing around with the numbers, I'm trying to kind of guess what number it should be. Now the reason I'm getting nothing, and I swore I wouldn't forget this, I need to undo the padlock first to make it open to, don't know why the padlock locks when it's plainly not characterized well. So we're just about getting in the zone now. There we go. So back over here it's gone green, and the angle there is kind of -1. Had some freaky things with a file from Blender where the hips needed to be 2 degrees rather than 0. It just needed to be 2 degrees to come good here. So some strange kind of system here. Now, so legs, spine, head, all good. It's all just down to the arms now. And the status also says that the left arm doesn't seem to be parallel to the x-axis. And the right arm doesn't seem to be parallel to the x-axis. So this is the thing about T-posing. Now, if you're lucky, the angle of the arm is just in the one axis, but quite often it's not straightforward like that. So you need to maybe look on the top as well. Oh, there we go. That one's popped in. I mean, it's all very well using the eye, but the perspective view is going to mess around with your perception of the angle. The problem with these bones here is that their relationship to the shoulder bone there isn't a sort of zeroed out number. So let's just see what I can do. This one looks close to 0. It may just be that it's the, yeah, it could be that forearm bit. So let's get the can't quite see it somehow. There we go. So numbers help fix it. If your eye isn't quite good enough, the numbers are going to do it for you. Let's see what's going on with the hands. Oh, look at that. Nicely populated. So all the Mixamo bones are being recognised by, all the Mocap bones, sorry, are being recognised by the Mocaps, by Motionbuilder. So there is a nice element of automation to this process. Brilliant, let's lock that. Biped. Fantastic. Okay, so a quick recap. I'm not going to save this, but at several points it probably would have been wise to save. Not that, you know, there's not some things that you can do, you know, quite quickly again, you know, to redo them, but it can take a lot of fiddling, especially if your Mocap skeleton deviates from human norms too much, or if you've got a bespoke hand-created skeleton which has the right joint relationships but really unusual kind of relative proportions. Okay, now the characterization process is complete. This figure is probably going to flip back. So when I yeah, it's already flipped back. There we go. You can see it's facing away from us already. So when I start, it runs past, well, through, goes beyond. Okay, so now it's time to transfer the motion over. So we're going to go from this take. Here is where you can see what take is being operated on. Being operated as the motion for any particular character. And up here you can see which actual character you're looking at. So I'm looking at my Mocap scale, and I really want to be looking at Norris Mixer. And now it's time to change the source. So I want to get the motion from Mocap scale. And now when I put the skeleton in, put the characterization into my character, he's in the sky, and I moved him down too late. So that's why that's happened. But you can see now that the motion has been adopted by my character. So there goes. Now one more thing to do, and that is to bake the motion from this skeleton. So the keyframes are still only existing on the skeleton animation from Mocap, and they need to be baked onto this, but not baked onto the skeleton. We're going to bake it onto the control rig, which is going to be instantaneously available to us now. Okay, so we're going to go to this magic button here, bake plot to control rig, and we're going to have FKIK mix. I presume FKIK means it's switchable between the two, but elbows and knees are traditionally the FKIK joints, and you can see now we've got these rather vivid control symbols. Okay, now this brings up a useful feature of Maya and Motionbuilder and other modeling and animation apps have this as well, which is to put elements of the animation in layers. So although this isn't kind of a good way to fix the issue, the way to fix the issue of my flying character would be to have moved the character down as soon as it imported, before I put the character onto it. So that's taught me a lesson. So I'm going to add a new layer. Now, presuming that you want to do some adjustments to the animation, or you want to extend it and make it more animated, less motion capture-y, make it more fantastical, more emotive, you're going to want to do some animation, but the way to do that is to use layers. You can put, for instance, the layer for hand animation, a layer for any facial animation, and you can use layers to do things like make a kind of extreme animation and blend between the original mocap and your extreme animation, just to tweak it to make it more kind of convincing or naturalistic looking, maybe more expressive. Okay, so you lock the base animation, and then you can produce changes in the animation layer. So for me, I would maybe want to in the first keyframe, I would want to key all of my position of this character from now on, so that it's actually near the floor. Okay, so that's how I would go about that. Okay, so for more information on animation layers, I suggest you have a read through the help file. Other sources are mocappies.com, MOCAPPYS.com, who's done some really useful stuff on Motionbuilder and has a useful YouTube channel too. So lots of good stuff there. Okay, so that wraps things up for this. Let's have a final scrub through again. Oh, I like the way he walks towards the camera there, looking nervously over the shoulder. If you heard a noise like a meow just then, that was the cat telling me to give her more attention. Okay, so what would be remaining to do was obviously clean up any areas of motion. You can find somehow that once you get the animation on your character, there might be some clipping, so you might want to change that. You might want to top and tail the T-posing and kind of rough frames at the end. Obviously the position here is a bit of an issue, but we can have a look at the elements now added in. So we've got this control reference here. If we look at there's a location for that somewhere, which I should be able to see between his feet. Can't see it there. Maybe it must be buried in the hip still. And so then if we look in the hips and see what's happening there, we should be able to see something in the F curves. Maybe more in the translation department. Just bring it all into view thusly. Let's just check back, see if it's the hips effector. Checking that it's not stuck onto the skeleton. It was plainly there. A bit more research needed maybe. Okay, so we're going to end it there. That's the bit that allows you. Of course there's no keys there because we're in the new layer. So if I go back to this layer, I should be able to see keys for those elements. Getting ahead of myself there. So we look in the control for the hips and go to F curves, and I can just see they're greyed out. So if I unlock, there we go, there they are. So that's just me being silly. So it's all there, all good, and we're going to leave it there. Thanks for watching.